Joining us right now is Kendall Coffey, of course, famed attorney and author of a book by the same name, Spinning the Law. Hey, Kendall, how are you?
Hey, great. Thanks for having me on. I miss your singing, though.
I know. You know, all right, maybe at the end I'll give one little quick Spinning the Law thing.
Okay.
And I want to remind everybody that Rick Santorum will follow Kendall Coffey in just a little while. All right, let's get to it. We have a number of issues, but this one I called the other day one of the most bizarre things I've ever heard in my life. And as an attorney, you probably find it more bizarre than me or more troublesome, but I'll let you decide. The New Mexico Supreme Court has basically said that you could serve on a jury even if you don't understand English. And this came because a convicted murderer appealed, saying that someone who did not understand English was dismissed as a juror, and the court said it was wrong, but his lawyer at the time had an obligation to raise it then, so they didn't overturn his conviction. But how on earth are we going to have non-English speaking people on a jury? Are they going to have translators with, they're going to wear headphones like at the UN? And how do we know that the testimony is being translated properly and all the nuances that go along with, the testimony at trials? Is this insane or not?
Well, I mean, apparently the New Mexico Supreme Court didn't actually apply it. They just said it in what lawyers call a dictum, something that's kind of like, oh, by the way, because the issue wasn't raised, and in fact, the convicted defendant did not win the appeal ultimately over this issue. But I got to admit, this is more than a head scratcher. This has got kind of your jaws dropping and your eyes rolling, because the constitutional right to a fair trial, where everyone in the courtroom completely understands the proceedings at every level is vitally important. And I of course I have a bunch of cases down in Miami, which is a very diverse community. And see, the one thing that we agree with opposing counsel upon, how lawyers fight over who gets on and who gets off a jury, and it's a big process. But if there's any indication that a juror does not truly understand and is comfortable with the English language, you can be assured that that's the one thing that both sides agree on. It just doesn't help the system of justice to have that. And it's beyond even simply translating, for example, witness. There's supposed to be jury deliberations at the end of it. And so we could, it's common sense, it's legal sense, it's U.S. constitutional due process, it's a lot of things. But I'd be astonished if this what I would call a very unusual decision goes any further. There's going to be agreement from everyone that, of course, a right to fair trial requires that the jurors, understand comfortably, not just minimally, but comfortably and fully the English language.
I would hope so. You made me feel a little better about all this, Kendall, because you say head scratcher, I always like banging my head against the wall saying, what the heck is this? Anyway, let's move on as we continue with Kendall Coffey here on the Steve Malzberg Show. Attorney General Eric Holder continuing with the Obama administration's a track record of picking a law and saying, okay, from now on, we're not going to defend this part of the law, or we'll throw out that part of the law, and we'll only enforce this part of the law, which I've been told by Attorney General Mukasey earlier this week is against the law in and of itself. But specifically as it refers to what Eric Holder did on Monday, saying that federal prosecutors will stop seeking longer mandatory sentences for many nonviolent drug offenders. And they're going to take actions in how they charge these people to make sure that they're not eligible for these mandatory sentences. And Mukasey said that this is basically illegal. If you want to change the law, go to Congress.
Yeah, I think it's a remarkable approach, and I'd be surprised if it succeeds. But in the short term, prosecutors have a lot of discretion. But here's the broader question, and I'm going to just get for a moment to talk about policy, because there's been a lot of discussion in the last 10, 15 years that, and many wise people who somewhat discredit the so-called war on drugs. And let me give you the counter argument to that. Crime is down, and certainly back in the 90s and in the 80s, there was an astronomical correlation between street crime and drugs. So much so that when they would test people when they were picked up off the streets, a remarkable percentage of people were positive as of the time of crime, and often on cocaine. We've had some success with enforcement, and it's a success, Steve, that's been consistent. I suppose you could say it's harsh. We're not quite like Turkey and the Midnight Express, but to have something that's effective, what really needs to come across is there is serious punishment each time, every time. And I know there are plenty of sympathetic cases that get caught up in that. Young people that all of a sudden are going away to prison for a long time, and I saw that during my time on the federal side. But there's really no other way to strongly communicate the message unless you are willing to see it through over time, tough punishment, certain punishment, each time, every time, and then you're willing to do that for a number of years. That will, over time, drive the problem down and drive street crime down, which I think has happened. So from my standpoint, and I'm probably in a minority at this point, I think that the tough sentencing policy has been a net positive for society, despite, obviously, individual cases where you see a young person, they don't seem all that bad, and why are they going away for a minimum mandatory of 5 or 10 years? So thanks for letting me speak.
And Kendall, when you say you're in the minority, I mean, it depends what circles you're talking about. Certainly, I think if you ask people on the street who are law-abiding citizens, they don't care about, they favor mandatory sentences. I mean, my attitude is, I feel my heart breaks for the person who's given a package and really, literally has no idea what's in the package and delivers it to somebody. I mean, that should be avoided. But people who are selling drugs or buying drugs or caught with drugs, even though they're not part of a cartel or a big drug smuggling ring or drug selling ring, as Holder said, I don't think they should get a special break. They're breaking the law. They know they're breaking the law. Then they should suffer the consequences. And you're right. Crime is down. Just as in New York City with stop and frisk and all the policies put in place after David Dinkins by Giuliani and continued and improved upon by Bloomberg, crime is down. And now all of a sudden you got these changes in policies saying, well, we have too many people in jail, so we have to do something about it. So we'll send fewer people to jail, and those low-level drug people are going to turn into, some of them, higher-level criminals.
Well, and of course, in the one of the reasons that society moved toward truth in sentencing. You remember, prison sentences used to be an illusion. Somebody get 20 years, but it would really be 3 years.
Right.
One of the reasons that we moved toward truth in sentencing through the 80s into the 90s was exactly that. Prison time wasn't real. The message on the street was not a convincing message. You had a revolving door at every prison and every jail. And what happens is not only do you reduce the crime rate in the sense that the message does get out that the punishment is going to be swift, severe, and certain, but you literally take somebody who might be committing 10, 20, 50 street crimes a year, and all of a sudden they're off the street years.
And that's the most important thing. Kendall, I will leave you with this: spinning the law, spinning the law. All right, there you go. That's going to have to carry you until we get this band back somehow. Kendall Coffey, thank you so much for your time, sir. Hopefully we'll speak next week.
Go ahead. We'd love to. Thanks.
Take care.